Nina Juice, a man with very little need for introduction. You just broke a world record for swimming around Malta, Gozo, Comino, and then some, for just over 142 kilometers. But before we talk about that swim, I want to take you back nearly exactly 20 years ago. It's August 2004. You just turned 18 and you're about to compete at the Olympics in Athens. How is that like for a teenager, and is that the moment you realized you want to put Malta on the map, or did that come later?
As you said, I was literally only 18, and the experience was not, I don't really remember it. It was very overwhelming. When it comes to mental preparation, we were very underprepared on such a big stage with so much expectation. So I can't say like that was the moment that propelled me forward. There was a lot of inspiration that I got from everybody who was there or watching all these amazing athletes, these from around the world, from all the different disciplines, because like it's not only swimming, I love all sports. But I can't say that was the moment that said I want to be a world record holder. Okay, well, the world record then comes, and now let's jump forward 2 decades again, right? It's a warm Saturday morning in September, maybe not as like it could have been warmer, and you just got into the water in Melliha. I think one of the last things you told your followers on a video update in the car was, the next time I sleep, it will be Tuesday, in 3 whole days in the future. Everyone in super high spirits, everyone's shouting, cheering you on, filming and taking everything. But obviously you seem very quiet, very focused, quite serious. What's going through your head the moment you walked down that beach and you hit the water? It's very easy to get caught up in the crowd, yes, and the people that were there cheering. I was super appreciative they were there. There were also children from my swimming school as well that were there, that swam behind me for the first bit. But if I get into that energy, into that vibration, then I'm going to probably start swimming too fast, because I'm going to be like hyped up and ready to go. So what my plan was to just really remain focused, really remain calm, going through the moments of the swim. I know the beginning is very tough, because as soon as you put your face in the water, all of a sudden the first thing that comes to your mind is, okay, 70 hours to go, which is really not the right way, but it's very difficult to stop yourself thinking that way. So I will be like really just calling in just a calm energy, just to, you prepared yourself really well for this day. You sacrificed everything. Now this is the moment you can go and enjoy it. And I do enjoy it, and I absolutely love it. And 11, 12 hours later, of course, we were following you every step of the way. I don't think I stopped refreshing your tracker. And at a point at around 11 p.m., I decided to track you down. And I drove down, I think it was around with Zurri, a little bit before with Zurri. And I walked down the cliffs. It was pitch black. It was so quiet I could actually hear your team from the cliffs at a feed, during a feed. And it was very cold. I was wearing a hoodie, and I remember saying, if I'm feeling cold, I wonder what Neil is feeling. This is the southwest. It's a particularly deep stretch of sea, as far as I know. What is a swim like this really when the sun sets, and how much harder does it really get? Because from our perspective, it felt like it's a completely different ball game. It's a completely different ball game. Like I always say, you lose one of your senses, everything else is heightened. Obviously there's no sun, so it starts to get cold, especially at around 1:30, 2 o'clock till sunrise. That is when it gets the coldest. And the water was essentially warm. I was comfortable with the temperature of the water. The problem that I noticed was happening was that every time I took a breath in, so I was turning my head to the side to breathe, I was breathing in cold air. And that cold air was going down inside me, and I could feel it just going slowly down there and just expanding inside me, this cold. I felt like I was hypothermic. I thought like if they had to check me, I was literally just shaking,
the lips chattering uncontrollably, also getting into my head that I'm wasting so much energy as well. So then what I was trying to do was, when I turned my head to breathe, instead of taking the normal breath in, I was just, which also like took a lot of concentration and a lot of focus, but with all the training that I'm doing, then that kind of, I was able to sustain it. And then I also said, okay, then this is kind of already a little bit better with me just breathing in a little bit. It's making it harder, but it's manageable. And like, what is the next step to do to keep yourself warm? Start kicking more, start moving faster. But then again, you're getting in your head that you're eating up energy from the swim of later on. You're just 11 hours into the swim. We also have warm food, so warm water, warm electrolytes, warm, everything that goes inside me is warm. Checked with temperatures to make sure I don't burn my mouth, but I'm telling them warmer, 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 because I needed to get warm. So at points I was burning my mouth. And it was tough. It was something that I wasn't expecting to happen. So it kind of just like took me by surprise, but we got through the night. Obviously, the team have to work double as hard at night. It's like everyone who sits on the boat is not allowed to move at night, because I get disorientated when I see people moving. I don't know who there is. I don't know what's happening because I cannot see. So it's very distracting. Everyone has to sit in the same place, and I'm very like strict with it. If someone's walking around, I'm like, whoever that is over there, stop moving, because you are distracting me, and I need to keep a high level of focus.
And beyond, of course, the focus, in fact, that's where it came, because of course we couldn't really know what you're feeling, but we could kind of see what you're seeing around you, or rather what you're not at night. And speaking for myself, when I'm in deep water, not that I am very often.
I'll take you on a tour if you want one time.
I would absolutely love to. This is official. That's it. That's it.
I mean, it's official. I mean, thousands of people are going to see it. It's official.
I get, obviously, I think it's a very human reaction to get scared around deep seas.
I think it's the being scared of the unknown, of not being able to see. But realistically, if you're in water during the day that is past 20 meters, you can't see. You're just looking to a blue hole. So all it is the difference is the blue hole to the black hole.
And are you scared of that? Is one of those holes scared? Like, is Neil Agius scared of anything when he's swimming in deep seas? Because from where we were standing, it didn't look like we were. I had a lot of conversations, and sure, you'll hear people go, sharks or whatever, or big fish or deep sea. Is any of that going through your mind at any point, or are you just so hyper focused? You could be in shallow water, deep water, you could be in Mallorca, you could be wherever.
It's kind of way down the priority list of what's happening. It used to come up a lot more in the first few swims. It barely comes up now, because I think I kind of like found a way of dealing with it if it comes up, so now it doesn't even come up anymore. I feel safe, I feel comfortable, I feel like this is what I'm meant to be doing. So although there might be that element of risk, it's a very calculated risk in my head.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough, fair enough. And speaking of safe and comfortable, I want to jump towards the end of the swim, or rather around halfway through, a little bit more, the second night. I specifically remember it was a Sunday night. I was going to get a bit of an early night's sleep because I had work the following day, and around 10 p.m. I remember feeling a little bit colder than usual. We were getting updates from your team, and they were telling me Neil is feeling pretty cold tonight. I remember checking the tracker and seeing that you were just about to cross from Gozo to Malta, from behind Comino, if I'm not mistaken. And to top it all off, I checked the weather forecast, and it seems like a storm is approaching as well. So from where I'm standing, I was like, every single odd that there is seems to be going a little bit against Neil. Was it as bad as it looked? Because from my end, it was very cinematic. It was like, so you have to have the ferry that we always, the channel where we always go, you know, Il Fligo or whatever. It's getting cold, a storm is approaching, it's the second night. it felt like if there ever was going to be a wall for Nila Juice, it could have been that night. Was it as bad as that, or was it just us being so entranced with your journey?
I mean, I feel like I should be asking you the question, did it look as bad as it was? You know, because for me, like I mentioned before, this is what I do it for. I don't do it for the first 40 hours. I do it for getting myself, so the first 40 hours are there to get myself to the point where everything in my body is telling me not to do it anymore. Everything in my mind is telling me, xinti tagħmel, intu rajtjo. And that is when I want to keep going, and that is when I want to challenge myself to take the next stroke, to hit the next milestone, to push through, and the team are there to support that. Obviously, it's very difficult for them because it was wild. It was wild, and I couldn't even understand the concept of how wild it was because I put myself through high intense situations for the last 3 years, so this becomes normal.
And that was the point? That was the xint tagħmel in your brain? Was it there?
I mean, for me, it wasn't xint tagħmel. It was, I noticed how bad it is from the expression on the faces of my team. And the worry on the faces of my team. I was happy. I was good.
In fact,
obviously the current that was against me and the time that I was wasting, that was my issue. Not that there was a 2-meter swell, not that there was any...
Efficiency was your issue.
Efficiencies, because when I'm swimming, I have a tank, yes, of energy. And I know when I need to use what to be able to get to the goal, to the end goal. Now, if I start eating up from parts that is not meant to be used at that moment, then it's a problem.
And in fact, one of the last questions about the swim itself is the end goal. Do you feeling comfortable? So we've heard all of those things. We've seen how, from our end, it looked a little bit worrying. We're seeing, you know, we're inside at the office and it's raining and we're going, I wouldn't want to be out there, you know, in the middle of the street, let alone in the middle of the street.
In your car?
In my car, eżatt. But we keep hearing Neil does not want to stop. And night 3 comes and we head to Witiż-Żurrieq. We're live from Witiż-Żurrieq and we see you on the horizon. We spot you. It's very easy to spot you, you know, the bit of
only lights in
the only lights anywhere. It's pitch black, and then we just see that when we go, that's Neil. There's already a small crowd there, and then we hear Neil still doesn't want to stop, and we actually see you pass by, and we're like, okay, he's not stopping here. Then all of a sudden we hear he is stopping, but just the next one. There's a bit of a panicked dash. In 5 minutes, Witiż-Żurrieq is empty, and all of a sudden our Lapsi is full. Like we literally rushed. We were stuck in traffic on a Monday night between Witiż-Żurrieq to our Lapsi. It's an hour of chaos. People are piling in. There's the ambulance. We're live. We're setting up all the cameras. Out at sea, even though it was pretty stormy, still it must have been a little bit more maybe quiet than what it was in our Lapsi. What was the feeling there? And was there a certain sense of like maybe regret that you weren't going to do the 160, or was it just focusing on, I'm here, I'm finishing it?
Regret of not doing 160 is always going to be there because it's something that I truly, every inch of my body knows that it can accomplish this distance. It doesn't happen for some reason or another, or has not yet happened for some reason or another. When we were swimming, and so let me just take you through the last 1 hour. I was swimming, I had stopped, we were between Witiż-Żurrieq and our Lapsi, and I told them, listen, I don't want to stop. I want to go to Golden Bay as we planned. I feel I can do it. At that point, they told me, okay, we'll go to Golden Bay. But being the swell that it is no longer safe for the boat to shift people, changing shift of people and bringing me supplies. So you are no longer going to be able to have warm food, warm water to drink. On the boat, just to give you an idea, the 2 chefs which are just preparing my food, which are from Dr. Jude's, which is John and Matthew. Matthew will be holding John up in front of the stove so he can stay steady to warm food and warm water and boil water and do all these things, which is not safe. So they told me, you cannot have water, warm water. And I told them, I don't care. I'm going to swim to Golden Bay because I feel like we have it in us to do it. When I then put my face back in the water, that's when I kind of start evaluating the situation. And I'm like, okay, there's nowhere to stop from our Lapsi to Golden Bay. That is a stretch of 6 kilometers that could potentially take you around 8 hours due to the fatigue, due to the hallucinations. You've already swam 10 hours more than you have ever swam before. So you don't know what's gonna happen. You don't have warm food, warm water. Let's be realistic, Neil. Like, I'll be having this conversation. Let's be realistic. Can you handle the cold? Can you? Because you didn't handle it the first 2 nights that well, and you had warm food and warm water. And I'm like, then it comes to the point that if I take the risk to go, and then I stop halfway, or stop 3/4 of the way, or 1/4 of the way, then I did it for nothing. If I came to our Lapsi by boat, or came to Golden Bay by boat, then it would have been all for nothing. So all these things were playing in my head. Now I really believe that if that stretch wasn't 16 kilometers and there was a 4-kilometer bay, I would have said I'll swim to that 4 kilometers 100%, no doubt about it. And if there was another 4 kilometers, I would have again gone. And if there was another 4 kilometers, I'd have again gone and would have made it slowly to the end. Being it was one big stretch, which was my fault because I insisted that it's okay that this stretch is there, because I was so sure I can do it, that if there wasn't the current against us, if there wasn't the problems that we came into before, that it would have been no problem. I was many times saying, maybe even we go back to Iemanjá, where we started from. You know, like what's going to stop us? It's just boop, around the corner, you know, once we're there. So that's where my mindset was. But obviously then we had to deal with the situation that we were in, which was an unlucky one. To hit 160, you almost need a perfect swim. And what is this perfect swim? And does this perfect swim even exist?
I actually have a question very similar to that on the perfect swim coming up very soon. But before that, the last part of the big swim, right? Your arrival, extremely emotional. People were shouting, cheering. I've never seen so many drones all in one spot. They were all lighting up the sea. People were rushing to get towels to warm you up and to even add more. People back home, we had thousands of people watching you and commenting. Like, it was a moment. It was a very big moment. But very understandably so, there were lots of moments where you looked completely out of it. This was the last moment.
Yes.
Do you remember what it was like slowly crawling up that ladder and sitting on the chair? And I mean, you walked up to the ambulance. Like, that in of itself, for me, is like a challenge after everything you've been through. You've talked a little bit about how, you know, you were seeing rubber pellets instead of people and all that. Like, what was it like? Was it overly overwhelming? Because it seemed like it was so much.
So it looked a lot more worse than it actually felt. And it was super intense, super emotional, but understand that I spent 60 hours by myself, completely not speaking to 2-3 people, maybe 4 people, seeing 10 people just watching me. To then going into a bay where there's a lot of noise, I'm hallucinating, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to get to that ladder. Could I see that ladder? Probably if I took off my goggles, stopped, put a few strokes up, and think I would have. Obviously there was a lot of shouting, so everything gets very distorted. Remember, quiet space, one person can speak to me, remaining focused. I also let go because I knew I arrived. And once you let go and stop things from happening to you, letting your body kind of just relax, everything starts to happen. So the hallucinations were quite intense. Now when I was approaching the ladder, that was my game plan. I understand the waves, I understand the sea. So I was going there close enough, so now the wave is gonna come and it's gonna push me into the ladder and I'm gonna grab onto the ladder. As soon as I grab onto the ladder, the wave is going to pull it out and it's gonna try and pull me out, but I'm just gonna focus on holding on. Because my hands are strong, my legs are not so strong because they haven't felt any weight on them. So then I wait for the next wave to come in and I properly put 2 feet on the ladder and hold on. And I'm like, okay, now this is step 1, step 2, up, step 3, up. Now, knowing from what happened during the Linosa swim, when I was trying to walk onto the beach, I kept standing up and I kept falling. We were not in a safe space there. If I stood up and I fell, I would have fell on the rocks, fell on the jetty, fell into the fence. So it was not safe. So I needed to make sure that every move I made, there was no room for error. So that's how much I was all there, you know. So I needed to put all fours on the floor and say, okay, make sure I'm feeling every part of my body. I can feel my ankles, I can feel my hips, I can feel my arms. Okay, I can stand up and I can sit down. And that is what happened, and that is what I did to make sure that I do not make mistakes to hurt myself or put anyone else in danger for them feeling like they have to jump in for me if I stood up. To think I was like, up, stand up, like I did in Linosa, I would have fallen. And that would have been stupid. Because then they would have jumped in, they would have held me, and it would have been over as well. So I needed to make sure I made 0% error. And that's what I did. So it was intense, but I knew what I was doing and I knew what I needed to do.
It was quite a moment as well, like when everyone had to, you know, it went from the loudest it has ever been in our Lapsi to the quietest.
I mean, that was insane, like how everyone understands the situation now as well. From the experience of Linosa, everyone kind of knew the drill of what was going to happen. They were ready to be silent. And that's exactly what they was. And it gave me the chance, so I'm so grateful that they were, and they all kind of followed what we needed to happen, so I can concentrate on tuning into my body to bring it back on land to get onto the chair.
And between Linosa and this, of course, there was Maracatu Ibiza, which had to be called off because of the intense amount, overwhelming amount of jellyfish stings. And specifically the reason why you swam in September this time round and you actually, you know, had to endure the cold, realistically, is to avoid these potential swarms of jellyfish. And I think it paid off. I don't think you got stung.
Just once.
You got stung once?
Once, just between, like, with his zurre.
Okay.
So at the very end.
All right.
On my lip and my tongue, just like one slash of one tentacle, so it didn't hit my face, it just one slash of one tentacle. And what was happening was I started to panic because when it stings your tongue, it can start to swell. So I was getting my tongue onto the roof of my mouth and just like rubbing it fast as much as I can to make sure the venom doesn't go inside and my tongue doesn't swell up.
So at the very end, they just told you, we're still here. You avoided us, but we're still here. Having experienced both of them, a very weird question, but like having experienced, you know, both discomforts, what would you say is worse? Those constant stings of jellyfish or always hovering around hypothermia?
It's a really good question, but I think when it comes to the jellyfish, if there's that many, we're talking hundreds, thousands in front of you, you cannot win. Whereas with hypothermia or with the cold, you have these managing systems where you can go faster, you have warm food, you have ways to kind of maybe sneak through, but the jellyfish, they're relentless. You can only get stung a certain amount of times. I had stings, my arms were swollen, like I had bumps in my arm from the swelling from all the venom. It was crazy for me to even do another stroke, like at that point when we're in Mallorca. When it comes to this cold, you really can go faster, warm food and stuff like we've been saying. So I would definitely choose the colder.
And beyond physical, of course, it's also mental. And I also want to touch a little bit on that because 2 days after your swim, you answered probably the most asked question, which you always have, which is the hallucinations, what you see, what you don't see, and what you believe the reason behind the seeing is. And I think you actually said, I'm not going to get into it too much because I could go on for about 20 minutes. Maybe we don't have 20 minutes, but maybe we'll have a little bit more than what you had last time. Can you run us through a little bit what you saw? And you said you think you have a theory as to why you keep seeing what you've sometimes described as Atlantis or these figures underwater.
The floor is yours. So hallucinations has been on my mind for this swim for a very long time because obviously I experienced it in Linosa, didn't even know it was going to happen that inexperienced we were with this kind of thing. So my plan was to, when I start hallucinating, to not let myself get too warped up into this whole hallucination and this whole trip or vision or visually whatever I'm seeing in front of me take over, because once you get too far into it, you are then, what's happening to your body? Are you doing what you're meant to? Is my stomach sucked in? Is my core engaged? Is my chin thing? Am I not making sure water is coming into my mouth? These are all things that take a lot of concentration, and if you're following a trip and your thing, you could not be doing it. So my plan was, when it happens, don't let it happen. In fact, when we were going into the second night, which is the 38-hour mark where we start, I had already started hallucinating in Linosa. So I was a bit worried, like we moved the swim to start earlier, so the second night would have been a bit more intense than the one in Linosa, so I was ready for some intensity. But what was happening was, when the hallucination started, I started to kind of not give it attention. So it's like, to give you an example, an analogy, is you're arguing with your girlfriend in your house and you're passing by each other and you don't really kind of give each other the second look, you know, and so I see something happening and I just like kind of like, I'm not interested, like keep moving, don't come and bother me. And it worked for most of the part. Then when it came to the second day, I kind of started to play around a little bit with it, and I could see kind of, again, the same thing that I said, like a manta ray with very long, thin wingspan, and up, flipped it around, and it was like a human thing. So when you say what was the theory behind it, for me, it's like, it's still not fully unpacked for me to kind of be discussing it in such detail, but it's, why am I seeing people under the water? Why am I seeing them from different aspects as well? So not exactly the same thing. Why am I again seeing, like this time when I felt like I was not moving in Linosa, there were walls and I was going over the same exact wall. This time there were pallets underneath me, so the sea in our Lapsi is super deep and it was just shallow, and it's the same pallet not moving. So I'm like, I'm swimming on a conveyor belt, feeling like I'm not moving. I'm still trying to figure out what they really actually mean. I haven't had time at all to kind of sit down and be with myself. I need to go for a little swim to be able to zone out and really kind of unpack it, but I don't have the exact reason. But we are kind of, our ancestries are all from this tribal background, and it feels like communities and people coming together are something that is very strong in me, and I feel like it's the way forward for us to gather in communities, whether sports communities or any hobby or anything, or something that they're into as a community, I think can make big differences in their lives.
And perfect segue, because of something that's obviously a little bit more personal to you and the sense of community that you feel, and it's very spiritual as well. And I know that you have actually gone on record as well to say you feel like a strong spiritual connection. I believe you mentioned the Iemanjá, the Brazilian spirit of the sea.
Yeah, it comes to learning how to, like the ocean for me, the actual sea gives me a lot of strength. The sun gives me a lot of power, and the moon is giving me lessons and a lot of wisdom. You know, I'm on my own essentially. There's my team, yes, but I have to put one stroke in front of the other, and I need to see how I'm going to use these natural resources that are so powerful that I'm immersed in to keep me moving forward.
And in fact, speaking exactly of the sun and the moon, I remember you said that, like, for the Sicily to Malta swim, you felt that, like, Iemanjá told you to use the power of the sun, and that for the Linosa to the Schlende swim, she told you to use the power of the moon. That to me is extremely interesting, and maybe as a Maltese person is not something that we have a lot of connection to, which is very weird because we live on an island, we're surrounded by the sea. So my question is, how does a Maltese person end up discovering such a strong connection with, like, a South American spirit? And did she tell you something before this swim?
I mean, now we have this kind of, like, when I swim, every time I get to swim, I just feel her presence and her giving me this safety. And like we were saying before, you're never scared. I feel it's because of this that I'm never scared. And don't forget, I'm in a place of a very hypersensitivity, so I can even feel the heat of the moon. So when the moon is up and it goes down earlier than it usually does, or goes behind the clouds, I feel it colder straight away again. You know, there's a lot of hypersensitivity. And yes, the swim, the approach we take is very spiritual. It is very humbling. It is we are there in their space doing what we believe we should be doing.
And jumping onto something that happened just before the swim. Mere, I think, days before the weather window for the swim opened, Malta was talking about something very different that somehow still had a little bit of a connection to you. We heard of Jake Vella, who passed away at just 15 years old. Now, you are essentially a multiple world record holder, and you've gone on record multiple times to talk about how Jake Vella was one of your biggest inspirations and heroes. So it was the timing was tragic, but also it was very interesting to see how someone like you looked up to someone like him. What was it about Jake you think that inspired you so much, and what was your relationship like with him?
What inspired me so much is how he would, through all the challenges, still have the willpower, still have the courage, still have the strength to get up and say, no, I want to go swim. No, I want to go ride a bike. No, I want to go for a run. Obviously, as time went on, these things became harder and harder, but still there with his father, holding an oxygen tank, swimming up and down. I mean, we find every excuse under the sun, including myself. I don't feel like going because I had a tough day at work, or my meeting was really kind of long and intense and my boss was being an asshole, so I didn't go to the gym after because it made me feel bad. And these guys in these positions, Thomas Mifsud as well, get up and do it. That's willpower that we can't even understand, because they can just say, I don't feel like, or they don't even need to say I don't feel like, they can just not go. And everyone will justify that reason. So they are defying everyone's logic. That is what inspires me about Jake.
And of course, speaking of important people in your life, I don't think it would be fair. I absolutely can't not mention Lara, obviously. There isn't a swim where we don't see her by your side every step of the way. She barely gets any sleep as well. It feels like she kind of does the swim herself, even though she barely gets into the water.
And she's
herself.
the one who does the biggest sacrifice, because living with someone who is preparing for something like this is no easy task. It's a very selfish journey. I cannot jeopardize anything for this swim. That is the detail and the level of dedication that I go in. So we put our whole life on hold, our social life. She has to go out and meet friends and go to birthday parties alone. I stay at home to rest, to sleep enough hours to wake up, to be able to swim. And also I have to work as well. So that is what takes the back seat. And she supports me to achieve our dreams, my dreams especially. And she's kind of the best person.
And it's this and the putting on hold as well that I wanted to ask, because it's now been, I believe, over a decade and a half of seeing Neil and Lara. And I want to take you back a little bit to 2021, to your Linosa swim, because before you left on that insane swim, Lara actually proposed to you.
Yes.
What was that like, and how has it been 4 years later? Like you said yourself, putting some things on hold. Like, what has it been in these last 4 years?
Yes, she had proposed, and it really kind of solidified who we are as a couple, and obviously the strength that she has already to do something like that for a female to propose to the male is very not common, let's put it that way, but that shows the strength that she has. Obviously, we have not yet got married. There's many discussions of how we're going to do it and whatnot, but it's also very inundating and takes up a lot of time that we need to be focusing on building certain aspects of our life, because these two me swimming has a timeline. me being able to do something or she being able to do something that she kind of wishes to do has a timeline and also changes once she gets married or maybe gets pregnant.
And speaking of timelines, I only have 3 questions left, and the first one goes back to you talking about the perfect swim, or if that perfect swim even exists. We heard Dr. Angie Rogers say that you were still very strong. You said yourself, I can definitely do 160. Now, sure, the perfect swim needs a lot of variables. And sometimes you get 80% of them, sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. If the perfect swim had to exist, every single person, even though it's very hard to believe, formula juice has a limit. Maybe it's not 160. If you had to throw a number, what do you think your limit is? Is it 180? Do you hit 200?
I'm throwing one. I know exactly what it is. Should I share it or should I not? What do you think?
I mean...
Okay, it's exactly 187.
You are that determined that is specifically, or how did you get to that number?
Many years of meditations and discussions with myself and how I feel during these swims. Each time I learn more, and with the new breathing techniques that I use while I'm swimming, with the new approach, the mindset and everything, that number just slowly creeps up every time. But with a lot of kind of not just listen, I want to do that and that's cool to do because I think what's the number, but it's how I feel. Like it goes up by 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers at a time, or even goes down sometimes, you know. But after the swim, that is the number I feel I can do. People will think it's crazy. People think it's fine for them not to agree with me, especially after how they saw me. But I know how I was feeling, and I know what my potential is. Whether I'll have the chance to do it, I don't know yet. Kind of, I always said, like, I don't think I'll be able to live with myself of not doing something if I can do it, like in 20 years' time, like saying, yes, I could have swam this 160 kilometers, but I didn't. That will be hard to live with. But I do understand what we have achieved this year during the swim was absolutely phenomenal, you know. Bringing a sport that everyone thinks is the most boring sport, and we got them on the edge of their seat with their fingers in their mouth for 3 days, checking their phone in business meetings under the table because they need to know where it was happening. This is unique, this is special what we have created, and this didn't come from jumping on a boat and taking a camera with us. This is months of meetings after meetings and planning, and for you to have that experience, for you to, because that's what I told my team, that's what I told Melly, I'm like, we need to stop the island for 3 days and we need to make them feel like they are sitting on the boat next to us. And I think we achieved those, and I think Malta should be very proud of this swim, and they are.
You absolutely did that. Like I can assure you.
I had I was just sitting at a cafe on the kind of near the pavement on the sea, and a guy came, 70-year-old man in this kind of dark black Mercedes, stops by and tells me that we made him cry. I made him cry during the swim, and in my head I'm like, this guy looks like he hasn't cried in many years, you know. Even the way he told me, like. It was like in Neshielek, you know, so to be able to bring that emotion to a nation is wow, like beyond our wildest dreams.
And of course, beyond the swim, now you've already said it's time to focus on other things, and you've actually also announced what the other thing is going to be. You're going to be opening up a Kaizen hub with Lara. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what you envision that to be?
Yeah, so basically this is, like we said, like we're very close to community, so this is kind of a space where people can come, people can feel safe to kind of open up, feel safe to learn these traits and not be judged. There's going to be yoga, there's going to be breathwork workshops, there's going to be the ocean mindset is going to be kind of running from over there, so small businesses can come for team building, learning how to access all these tools and skills that we have learned. Even as a couple, we are going to be doing workshops together to bring other couples to kind of understand our journey as well, because what you see now is 13 years of work, You know, we were not always at this place where we are. That will be, but it takes a lot of work, like everything else does, you know, and little improvements every day, and that's what is Kaizen's definition, is the continuous act of little improvements every day. It's a Japanese word. And Kai is also water, and Zen is also kind of our natural demeanor, super chill, super relaxed. So I'm very excited to kind of be able to have a space to be able to bring people together.
And for my last question, I want to technically take you back to the very first one. It's nearly been exactly 20 years. Funny how it's nearly exactly to the day, August 2004, September 2024. You're not 18-year-old, teenage, slightly unprepared, overwhelmed Neil anymore. You are the man who has a world record under your belt, and you managed to stop an entire nation literally for 3 days to follow you every step of the way. And while you definitely have interesting, exciting, non-swim projects planned, you also did just say 187 is that number. Maybe not now, but every single person knows, and Neil Agius definitely knows, never say never. What would it take for you to go back and do something this big, do you think? Would you just say...
Like you said, you can never say never, but it's just like the fact that I felt like I couldn't swim anymore and kept swimming. That happens quite like after 40 hours. You're awake for over 2 days, 2 nights. It's super intense. I love those moments. I love that place where everyone says like they can't do it anymore. It's where I want to get myself, because that's what kind of ticks my boxes, you know. Will I ever have the opportunity? It's kind of like I have to feel into it coming to me. I'm not going to go forcing to swim. Definitely not next year. Definitely have some other plans in store for the next few months, but you never know, I might wake up tomorrow and feel like I need to swim again. So I'm going to leave it like yay, nay, I don't know. I'm just very proud of what we achieved as a team. I'm very proud of what I achieved personally as well. The journey, we always talk about the end result was great, but the journey was absolutely fantastic. Who I was before, during the Linosa swim, and who I am now is a completely different human being. And I'm just kind of just excited to immerse myself in actual social life. So slowly going out of the house, slowly leaving the house past 9 p.m., not having such a rigid timetable to be home at 6:30, to cook by 7:30, to eat before enough time before I sleep, to make sure that my sleep is complete. So yeah, it's just, I think I'm excited about the little things, meeting friends, and not having to tell my friends, sorry, I'm not coming. I think they stopped asking me, like they gave up. But they've already started crawling out of the woodwork. It's we're gonna meet, we're gonna go there. But slowly getting myself back into society, I would say.